It's now been a little over a month since Destiny 2's 2022 expansion, The Witch Queen, was released. If you're like me, you have probably put in a concerning number of hours into this expansion, whether it was to try to get the world's first in the new raid, to defeat the Witch Queen herself, to discover the new system in Destiny and that of weapon crafting, or whatever it may be. I'm sure you have probably formed your opinion around the expansion after having a month to play and digest the new content, as I have. I originally planned to make a Witch Queen review. However, I noticed that SkillUp released his hour-long take on the new chapter in Destiny, and rather than releasing a shorter review that would have just said roughly the same things he said, I wanted to take a different approach. Rather than making a review to an already heavily reviewed expansion, I wanted to give my take on this expansion, and wanted to not only shine a spotlight on the ups of this expansion, but also the downs, because even though this expansion has been amazing, it also has its flaws. So today, I wanted to cover what are, in my opinion, the hottest topics when it comes to the Witch Queen, in the form of a feedback piece to Bungie. Without further ado, let's get into it. As per every review, we need to start with the campaign, as it's the first thing players will do when they log into the game. I remember when the Witch Queen was being teased from August 2021 to February 2022, Bungie would remind us time and time again that the Witch Queen's campaign was supposed to match the high quality standards that a single player game's campaign, like Doom or Titanfall, would have associated with it, and I can say fairly that Bungie was not lying. The Witch Queen campaign is easily the best campaign in the series because it does three things perfectly. The first thing it does perfectly is tell an intriguing and engaging story of how Savathun, or the Witch Queen, was given the light and how she gave it to her Hive army, but on how eventually this power would manipulate the Hive to fight for a cause that would solely benefit Savathun, which in turn would make the Hive a victim to the light. It also serves as a perfect lead up to what will be the next era of Destiny, which is the fight against the Witness in the Veil, which we will probably see in Lightfall in 2023. As a player who has never really been into the lore and story that Destiny told, I was beyond fascinated and sucked into this story and how well it was being told. It's told simply enough that anyone can understand it, but complex enough that lore gurus will have a field day going through it. It's the best of both worlds, and it's the best that Bungie has ever executed. So much so that it makes other campaigns seem worse than they honestly are, simply because of how amazing the Witch Queen's campaign is. The storytelling in this campaign showed that Bungie listened to the community who said we wanted better storytelling, and it makes me even more excited for Lightfall, since the same team that produced the Witch Queen's campaign will be producing Lightfall's campaign, so I have nothing but high hopes. The second thing the campaign does correctly is the gameplay and difficulty. Before Witch Queen was released, Bungie had revealed that the campaign would come with a few changes, as they wanted to tweak how the missions felt. These changes would include small mechanics that would compare to the mechanics that we see in dungeons, missions with multiple different boss fights, and missions that just ran for a much longer time than previous story missions without feeling too long. In the past, Destiny's story missions would run on for roughly 10 minutes at most, which made them feel like pushovers and almost made them forgettable. However, with the Witch Queen, every mission is roughly 20 to 30 minutes long, with each boss fight being a challenge. It makes the challenge not drag on, which was an issue that most previous Destiny campaigns had suffered from. These challenges were perfect for the campaign and were implemented at the perfect time. What makes this even better is the fact that the campaign comes with two separate difficulties from the jump. When Bungie revealed the Witch Queen back in late August, they revealed the campaign would have two difficulties, Normal and Legend. Normal would serve the players that wanted to get the campaign over with, while Legend served for the players that wanted to challenge themselves. In the past, I felt that Bungie would sometimes call the wrong activities challenging, but they most certainly use the right words when talking about the Legend campaign. The Legend campaign keeps players underleveled compared to the mission's level. It will scale enemies' health depending on the number of players in your fire team. This means that the campaign will get harder depending on how many people you run it, and let me tell you, this was amazing. It provided a challenge which isn't something that we come across very often in the series. Typically, Bungie's take on a challenge is spamming the players with a bunch of champions that are higher level, or putting enemies that can one-shot into an activity to make you cower, but that's not organic difficulty. The Legend campaign has organic difficulty, and it was addicting. I never thought I would find myself saying this, but I found more satisfaction killing Savathun in Fireteam 3 on Legend difficulty than I did killing most dungeon bosses. Hell, I'd be willing to extend that to certain raid bosses. that should speak to the levels of how great it was to face an enemy that was actually challenging. An enemy that isn't dangerous because they can one-shot you or because they can only be killed in a certain way, but rather because it was a tanky enemy that put up a fight. It was sensational to experience this as a PvE player who has been desperately craving some challenging gameplay. The third and final thing that this campaign nailed was the replayability. Now, campaigns usually aren't very replayable, especially in Destiny. You usually run through it to get the rewards so that you can play the rest of the game. However, the campaign in Witch Queen does have some replayability attached to it. I'm speaking of the fact that a heroic version of these missions are replayable from powerful and pinnacle rewards for when you're leveling your character up. Furthermore, you can obtain weapon crafting materials from the heroic version in the form of ascendant alloys as a random drop at the end of these missions. It adds some replayability that other campaigns fail to reach, which is great for the game. It makes it so that the campaign isn't a one-and-done experience, but rather one that can be cherished, which I think this campaign deserves because of how spectacular it is. I'm aware of the fact that I've been going on and on about this campaign, but I can't stress enough the major step up this campaign has been. I can only hope that Bungie continues to keep this trend going with future campaigns, and that the times of campaign missions being pushed over storytelling activities that were mostly boring becomes a thing in the past. We're not going to spend too much time here, as the leveling process going from Beyond Light to Witch Queen hasn't really changed much. I do want to give props to Bungie, however, for giving players an option to speedrun the leveling process by doing the campaign on Legend difficulty. If you were to complete all campaign missions on Legend difficulty, you'd be rewarded with a full set of 1520 gear, alongside some other treats. This made the leveling process much less tedious compared to previous expansions. Also, going from 1350 to 1500 was done well, as you get to 1500 pretty quickly on your first character, and then you just fly through the levels on all of the characters that you log on to after your first character gets to a high level. For me, in week 1 of grinding the Witch Queen, my first character got to 1540, and every character that I ran after that was already at 1500 by the second mission, which was just phenomenal for the game and made leveling much easier to do. As I said, not much to note here, but I still wanted to give praise to the 1520 Gear 7 award, and I hope that Bungie continues this in the future. I'm going to get into weapon crafting as I feel it's an important subject to talk about. Weapon crafting was a system that I was actually skeptical about, but eventually came around to. I didn't like the idea of just giving away free weapons that are, or at some point could be considered meta, but I've learned that this is simply the fairest approach to take, and it's something I can respect. But with that being said, I think the execution of weapon crafting has been underwhelming for a few reasons. Reason number 1 being the lack of a guide for crafting. Weapon crafting is a process that should be straightforward, and while it has become an easy process, it was confusing as hell day 1. Going into the expansion, the community was aware that players would need to obtain A-level versions of a weapon that are marked as deep sight resonance in order to craft the weapon. The main issue is that any legendary weapon in the game can get deep sight resonance on it, but only a small handful of legendaries can be crafted. This gave players the impression that there was a much larger list of weapons to be crafted when in reality there wasn't. Furthermore, the process of getting materials and or patterns to craft these weapons has proven to be bad. The idea of having to obtain several deep sight resonance copies of one weapon just to craft it can kind of make the process much more tedious than it should be. It just gives players a chance to either come across a weapon that is better than the weapon they want to craft, or come across a role for the weapon that they want to craft, which in turn eliminates the whole point of crafting a weapon. Now the counter to this would be the fact that randomly dropped weapons can get enhanced perks, which then brings me to my next point. Reason 2. Enhanced perks are not really worth it. While the previous statement is 100% correct, it does not matter when you take into the fact that most enhanced perks, if not all, provide such a small and even sometimes unnoticeable change to the original perk. Most enhanced traits just offer a stat boost to one stat, which isn't bad, but what it is that is bad about it is how much of a boost you get to said stat. Take Enhanced Firing Line for an example. Original Firing Line gives the wielder a 20% damage increase to precision damage when they're standing around 2 or more fire team members. The enhanced trait does that, but also provides a stat boost to range. Do you know how much of a boost you receive? A whopping 4 additional points to range. So on a weapon like the Thoughtless, for example, that can get Enhanced Firing Line crafted onto it, the range goes from 56 to 60, which is a change that won't even be that that noticeable in 95% of weapons in the game. And sadly, damn near every one of the enhanced traits in Destiny suffer from the same exact problem. The only two traits that I can think of off the top of my head that may actually be worth crafting would be Enhanced Overflow and Enhanced 1-2 Punch, with Enhanced Overflow overflowing your mag a little further, and Enhanced 1-2 Punch opening new opportunities for Titan bonk builds. The last reason I have for why weapon crafting is underwhelming is as follows. You can't customize your weapon. I do want to provide some additional context at this point, as I feel it is needed. Well, yes, you can select what perks you want on your weapon. You can also switch the perks out for others if you find yourself fancying a different perk combination. It doesn't really make the weapon that much more different compared to other weapons. This was a point that was mentioned in Skill Up's Witch Queen review, which I'll have linked in the description below. A great point he made is that while you can select the perks you want on the weapon, it still doesn't feel like your weapon because the customization isn't there. He then went on to list different possible additions to weapon crafting that would fix this issue, like naming your own weapon. This is a point I can't help but agree with. It would make every weapon feel unique in its own way. It would make weapon crafting exciting if it could not only craft the exact same role that you want, but further customize the weapon's flavor text, name, so on and so forth. Another change that I think would be cool with weapon crafting would be to allow players to change things like the RPM of a weapon when weapon crafting. Imagine you found a pulse rifle that has great perks, and that you really want it to use. However, it's a part of an archetype that you are not very fond of. Imagine if you could craft that pulse rifle and change the archetype to one that suits you more as a player. This would then help further the customization that I feel weapon crafting is lacking. While I think the system is a good idea for the series, I think it needs to see a few new additions and some updates. Thankfully, Bungie has shown that they are listening by announcing some changes coming to weapon crafting next season. So here's to hoping we can see more changes in the future. Okay, so this piece of feedback isn't really one that associates only with the Witch Queen, but more so with the game in general. Over the past few years, we have been growing significantly more powerful as players, thanks to different factors like mods, updated subclasses, new weapons, and builds that are being put together and released upon the community. On paper, this would be phenomenal, especially for a looter shooter like Destiny, and while I do agree with you, that's not the case at this point in the game. We have reached a point in Destiny where we're so strong as a player that most of the content feels too easy. This is becoming more of a problem now thanks to builds being introduced. Players are putting together builds that would put in a significant amount of work, but they can't really use them because there aren't enough scenarios for them to be viable, and content isn't difficult enough to give these builds a true challenge. Well, content isn't even hard enough to challenge a player without a build. This is something that many YouTubers from the likes of Datto, Mylan Games, SkillUp, Swatical, and many more have been preaching about. While I gave credit to the Witch Queen campaign for showing how difficulty should be handled in Destiny, it seems that it could almost become a curse for Bungie. I say this because the community is now well aware that Bungie can produce content that is challenging. Bungie has also proven that they can create content which features high enemy density, which would allow builds to shine, like Battle Queens for example. But Bungie hasn't given the community an activity that combines the two into one. Imagine for a moment an activity with the enemy density of a battleground with the difficulty of the Legend Witch Queen campaign, especially if you are able to throw in a difficulty scale depending on the number of players in that fire team. If the loot is worth it, it would prove to be the best PvE activity to ever grace Destiny, hands down. I'd even be willing to go as far as to say it could take Destiny to the next level. This is something I really hope Bungie can find a way to implement into Destiny, because it would be phenomenal not only for players that are craving a challenge, but also for players who are craving for an opportunity to use the build that they worked so hard to put together. Just some food for thought for Bungie. This video was not supposed to be a review for the Witch Queen, although at some points it definitely felt like one. I originally had planned on making a Witch Queen review, even going as far as to type out an entire 9-page script for it, but after SkillUp's review, I felt that this was a smarter way to approach this topic. I want to make it very clear that my love for this game is still burning strong. Destiny has been the reason that I have not only found and made some of the strongest friendships that I have, but it is also the reason for some of my favorite memories growing up. The Witch Queen is a new era for Destiny, and it's one that I think, so far, has started off terrifically, with the expansion only having a few hiccups with it. This video is also not supposed to be taken in a way that makes me seem whiny and whatnot, but rather me expressing some changes that I hope make its way into the Destiny universe. I truly believe the game can only go up from here, and I feel that the foundation laid down by the Witch Queen and some changes, whether confirmed changes or simply suggestions, can make Destiny be the game we all want it to be. If you've reached this point in the video, I truly appreciate you. I haven't uploaded in a while, which seems to be a common way for me to end the scripts as of late, but I'm hoping to actually put an end this time around. I have more videos planned to release within the next few weeks, including a documentary style video that I think will be very interesting. So if you want to be around when those videos drop, be sure to subscribe with bell notifications on. Also, please be sure to like the video if you found it enjoyable, and be sure to comment what I should cover next. Finally, check the description below where I posted all of my socials, and be sure to follow me there, as I post pretty often, especially on Twitter. With that being said, thanks for watching, and as always, good luck with gaming.